Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It is Friday, the 23rd of May at 9:49 p.m. And tonight, I'm going to just have a little bit of fun, and I'm just going to do a podcast called Mountain Stories about my decade in Costa Rica, which is as interesting as anything you're going to see on the Talamanca Review in its own unique way. Different, but nonetheless interesting. I came to Costa Rica in October of 2014, and my first time coming here was in 2001, which would have had me at about, I must have been about, 34 years old. It was right after my divorce, and I came for, I think, 2 weeks. I was 2 or 3 weeks. I had a friend down here, and he had a teak farm, and he had been living down here for a number of years, a Canadian guy, older than me, originally from Calabria, Italy, and then migrated to Canada, and then from Canada ended up migrating to Costa Rica. But he went back and forth between Canada and Costa Rica. And so I took the opportunity to come down here and visit. I remember everything about that first visit. I remember falling in love with the place. If you have any kind of an affinity for nature at all, you will fall in love with Costa Rica. It has to be one of the most beautiful places in the world for natural life. I mean, you know what it's like to be sitting on your front patio on a sunny day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Your mind is blank. You're just sitting on a sofa. We spend a significant amount of our time outdoors here, but it's patio space, right? So it's roofed patio space is really big in the tropics, right? So you sit out front in front of this main house, which I'm in now, not podcasting from my bodega. I switched the computers around today. I put the Windows machine in there with another monitor, and brought the Mac out here. I won't get into the reasons why, but it has to do with the power supply and some stuff that was going on in the bodega. And I just retreat to the bodega when I have guests, okay? So you're sitting on your front porch and you're having a coffee, and a blue morpho butterfly floats by. A blue morpho butterfly is a miraculous thing to observe. They have something going on with their wings where they reflect light and they appear fluorescent when the sunlight catches them. And they can be seen from airplanes, kind of the way like binocular lenses will reflect light and you can see a flash from quite some distance away. But with the blue morpho butterfly, it's like a blue flash. And it's just one of those little things you see in nature and you go, wow, this is just such an incredible place. And the first time I was here in 2001, I saw all parts of the country, and well, not a lot. I mean, the Central Valley and parts of Limon where I now live. And I just kind of fell in love. And you can, I even put it in my novel, like God is an Economist. For those of you who've read it, it finishes in Costa Rica. Kind of a strange foreshadowing of what was to come in my life. And then the next time I came to Costa Rica was in 2012, and this was after I had just finished a 3-month contract at a at a at a software company in Canada. Three-year contract. I've only worked at a couple places for 3 years, and it's interesting because both brought me to Costa Rica. So the one I was working that brought me here after I finished a 3-year contract was in Waterloo, Ontario. A fascinating little town, a lot of tech companies. And the second time was I worked a 3-year contract was at the bank that built this house, right? That's where I got all the money to build this place. And I remember in 2012 really, really, really kind of feeling out whether or not I wanted to live here or not. And that's why I stayed for 6 months. And at the time, the tourist visa was 3 months, so I had to do a visa run to Panama. And I mean, everything worked out. It was a fun time and everything. And yeah, it was a good time. And I fell deeper in love with Costa Rica in 2012. And then that's when I began to form the idea to move here. And it was in between that 2012 trip and moving here that I made the first attempt to write Stardust Ranch and failed. Quit like the other 4 writers did after me. It's interesting. I've never contemplated the sequence of things in this way before. It's just kind of coming about spontaneously, and it's interesting for me to just piece it together talking out a podcast like this. When I came back in 2014, I had a friend who lived in the Central Valley, and I lived there for about a year. And then I started looking for property. I knew I wanted to live rural. I knew I wanted to build an earth bag house. And I knew that I wanted to live in the jungle. Now, this is unusual. I mean, not a lot of Costa Ricans even still live in really remote places. The life I live in Costa Rica is considered the traditional Costa Rican life, the campesino life. So when, you see stuff like postage stamps and stuff like that over here, and a lot of their art, they have some semi-famous painters that just do realistic oil on canvas, and they always paint the Costa Rica I live now, which most Costa Ricans don't live. Most of them have moved to cities now, and most of them are working a job similar to a North American. They're in advertising, they're in marketing, they're in software. There's some hardware stuff over here as well. Intel built a chip factory over here. And, you got your normal professions, school teachers, lawyers, all the stuff that every society has. They have all that stuff over here as well. But all of them are 1 or 2 generations removed from the way I live. And because I knew I could work remote, I decided that I wanted to come and just live a different way. And live the way basically the way I'm living now. And so I started looking around for land. And this was a relatively lengthy process. It involved numerous trips, which are about 2.5 hours in one direction. So I'd have to plan a whole day, and I would come out to this part of Costa Rica because this was the only part of Costa Rica that I could really afford land in, because all the other provinces had begun to develop and were on their way to becoming too expensive for me because I've never really had a lot of money. And also, I wanted to move to a rural area because I knew that the building inspectors would not give me a hard time about anything I did. So there's a few zonings over here: residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, and then there's like a wild designation over here where and you can do anything in a wild zone. Well, almost anything. You couldn't come in with 500,000 tons of concrete and build something insane. But so that was my dream, and I had been studying between 2012 and 2014 when I came over. I had been studying earthbag architecture on on the internet, and I'd bought a few books and was studying how to do it. And I was waiting for my son to finish high school because I wanted him to come over, and I needed somebody to lead the crew and basically build the house because I did not build the house. I worked at a very stressful job and made the money to build the house. So that's the way it worked. And I ended up coming up here. And I remember as soon as we saw the land, we knew that this was the place, my son and I. There's a magic here, like even in a country that is largely magical. It was like amplified here. And we didn't know, when I bought here, I did not know it was a UNESCO heritage site. Did not know much about it at all. And so it was really quite something. And I bought my land. I think at the time I paid, this would have been in 2014, I paid 5,000 for 1 hectare. And it's what's called untitled property. But it's very interesting the way Spanish common law works. You have rights to land if you live on it for a certain amount of time, and it's considered yours. And the term in Spanish is posesario, possession. And, possession would be posesión, but posesario is the possessor, I think, is what it is. And it goes back to Spanish common law, which was very different from English common law. Remember that, right? And the only reason English common law dominates the world now, it really begins with the Bank of England and the great, Protestant, Calvinist, Kabbalist movement to explore the world and garner resources. It begins with the British Navy. It begins with the colonization of the Americas. And so you've got all of these satellite countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United States, which appropriated British common law. And British common law is very different than Spanish common law. Spanish common law, I would say, I don't want to talk out my ass here, but Spanish common law has a little bit more respect for the campesino, the peasant. Okay? But it goes both ways. You got to be very careful over here. I've heard stories of like gringos losing houses over here because they leave for 6 months. Somebody moves into their house, and it's almost impossible to evict them after they're there longer than 6 months. It really, it can happen. Now with title, it can't happen, but possessario is, it's yours, but I don't know how to explain it. I guess I've done as a good a job as I can do explaining that. But the real fun began when my son and I came out here and started building the house. And that was my favorite time up on the mountain. I mean, it's not like worse now or anything like that, but That was definitely my favorite time. And the reason it was my favorite time is everything was so magical. I think we had like 6 to 8 laborers, depending on who was on and who was off. And they really came together as a team, and that was largely due to my son. And they started building the house. And I rented a house down in town. It was a bit expensive. It cost like 600 US a month, which was a bit high for Limon, but what are you going to do? And so there was a lot of preparation work that had to be done. Like, I had to hire a personal assistant to help me gather the materials. I mean, it took like 6 weeks, 8 weeks just to find the bags. And we eventually found them um, at a commercial bakery in San Jose. And we found 25 kilogram polypropylene bags with the square thatch on the bottom, which is perfect for earth bag building. Or you call it a square bottom. And there has to be a certain weave to the bag. It has to be what's called 10 by 10, which means there's 10 polypropylene weaves per centimeter. And that's the strength you need in the bag to build earth bag building. I forget how much they were. I think they ended up being about, I don't know, like 10 cents a piece or something. But uh, like with transportation and everything, it probably cost me about, I don't know, $5,000 to get them all down here. It was really quite something. And no, not five. What? Five? Yeah, $500 to get them all down here. And then once I moved up to the mountain, I started working with and meeting all of the neighbors, and that's what I want to talk about tonight. Is some of the more incredible people I've met over here, people you've never heard about in a novel or in a story, people you've never seen in a movie, people you would never know even exist unless somebody like me tells you, which I'm going to do right now. So it's important to state at the outset that my philosophy on the project was no professional construction people were needed. That the philosophy of earthbag building was that you use the resources around you, which is just the earth, with a few additions. To understand the construction, you can think of the ancient adobe structures that have been built all over the world, basically mud and straw houses. But the modern methodology is you put them in polypropylene bags, you line each row of bags with 2 rows of barbed wire, what's called 4-inch barbed wire, meaning that the points are 4 inches apart. And when the walls, 2 times with the walls, you put half-inch rebar, you nail it through with a sledgehammer in a cross formation. And the rebar is cut to about a meter or 3 feet long. And so in a lot of ways, the place I live is a Faraday cage as well. There's not a lot of electromagnetic energy that gets in. And I have to set up, even with Starlink, I have to put the modems in Windows so that I can, my office that I work in, that I've been podcasting from, I can pick a signal up there through the wood door. Okay, otherwise nothing comes through here. It's like a Faraday cage, as you can imagine, with all the barbed wire and the rebar. And then the wood frames for the windows and the doors were all cut from wood up here. The doors were built from wood up here. So there's only a few things you need from a hardware store. And then when you're done and you're going to what do you call it, plaster the walls, and that's done with about 70% lime, 30% concrete, and that keeps all the mold down. When you're done, your walls are about 22 inches thick. I mean, they would stop a bullet. I don't think a 50 cal would get through these walls. It's really quite incredible, and the feeling inside these places is really good. So the philosophy was to build local and to just use local talent and teach them how to do this. And my son did this. He did all of this at 18 years old, and it was pretty frustrating. And we got ripped off a couple times. We had to fire some people, and we began to get the lay of the land. And we basically worked with a few groups of people. Now, groups of people over here are always families. Latino culture is so family centric, it's unbelievable. And you get a sense of it watching movies and television, but you can't really understand it till you live with them. Like, because there's no real social safety net in the Latino world, there's nothing like we have in Canada or the United States, where you can live on government benefits quite comfortably your whole life and get some side gig under the table making another $1,500 a month, and then you're living like a king, right? There's none of that down here, and there's none of that in most parts of the world. We invented what I call the free ride countries, okay, and it's a first world white man bullshit guilt complex that we should get over, quite frankly, because it's not productive to anybody, and it's not spiritually beneficial to anybody to allow them to exist without producing, because nature doesn't allow it. So why should a man-made society allow it if nature doesn't allow it? It's a sin. It's karma. But we do it big time in the West. Here, no. And so your only social safety net is your family. And so the families here are really, really tight. But they still screw each other over. Like, it's funny to watch them interact. It's quite something. And the first family I'll tell you about is the Arana family. And they're still my friends to this day. They live on the mountain, part of the family. And the rest of the family lives down in town. And there's a number of different little towns at the base of the mountain. There's Batan, Matina, Barabilla, Espabel, Rio Hondo, which is almost a uniquely black neighborhood. Sikiris, and they're small towns, and when you get off the mountain, everything's flat down there. It's really hot and it's really humid because the Atlantic Ocean is about 10 kilometers away. You know, I'm about, I don't know how, maybe 10 or 15 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean. But going directly from where I live, there's not really a whole lot of beaches or anything like that. So you just make do with what you have. And I like the mountains. I don't like the beaches. Now, the Arana family is one of the most interesting groups of people I've ever met in my life. The patriarch of the family is named Ramon. And I say he's the patriarch of the family because he's the oldest of 4 brothers. And then I think there's another 4 sisters that live down in town. And the 4 brothers who stayed on the mountain, they're all bachelors. And I mean, I think they have kids. Like, I think Ramon has a daughter that works at a 5-star hotel in Connecticut, and she went there with the mother. And they're Jamaican. So there's a lot of Jamaicans were brought to this province in Limon to build the railway like 100 years ago. And then they stayed here. They were brought, I think, as on some kind of labor contract, and they stayed. So Ramon is Jamaican, and I think his father was Nicaraguan, but his father was also black from Nicaragua. I don't know if he was Jamaican or not, but his mother was definitely Jamaican. So one of the reasons we worked with them was they spoke a bit of English. And so I gave Ramon a job, and at the time Ramon was about the age I'm at now. He was late 50s, around 60 years old. And he could still work, which is amazing. You know, they're being able to work is like a prideful thing over here. You know, because if you can't work, you're not going to get anything. You're not going to get a woman, you're not going to get a house, you're not going to be able to feed yourself, you're not going to get anything if you can't work over here. Now, the interesting thing about Ramon, and he's got three brothers. He's got a brother named Hugo, a brother named Guillermo, and a brother named Tino. And Guillermo lives down in town, and three of the brothers live on the mountain. Two of the brothers live in wooden shacks. Tino lives off in the jungle a little bit. And they're kind of, I don't know if I'd say they're like for real Rastafarians, but pretty close to it anyways. And Tino has provided some comic relief through the years. Like the first year we were up here, we were building, and you'd see a helicopter go by, like, you know, they were looking for something on the mountain. And my workers would tell me they're looking for Tino's weed, because Tino would have weed planted in the jungle. And I don't know how many plants he'd grow at a time, like 30 or 40 or something. But the cops would always find them, and they'd burn them. And it's hard to describe Tino. Like Tino, I think he's about 65, 68 years old. He's very thin. Everybody up here can walk. Like a 70-year-old man here can walk 25 kilometers in a day. You got to understand how different it is from North America, how physical life is for campesinos in Central America. So they stay relatively physically healthy their whole lives. When they go quickly. Like they'll get a diagnosis of something and they'll be gone very quickly. I've noticed how they don't suffer that much. They're like here, and then they're not here. And Tino looks crazy. Like he's a massive alcoholic. All the brothers are alcoholics. Well, two of them anyways. And then down into the nieces and nephews, the alcoholism persists. But Ramon was one of the more interesting people that I've met up here. I don't know what's going on with Ramon. This is the guy that can call birds to his hand. He's got this relationship with nature that is really kind of mind-boggling. Like everything grows around him. Okay? He can go on 7-day benders. They have this white liquor over here that's made from sugar cane. It's like Central American vodka. And it's dirt cheap. It tastes like rubbing alcohol. Like if I were ever going to drink it, I'd have to mix it with Coke or something. And but they just drink it straight. And it's sold in 500 milliliter bottles. And a bottle is about $3 US. So less than the price of a beer at a bar in the United States. Half the price of a beer. And it's 40% alcohol, just like a whiskey. And so a 500 milliliter bottle is about, I don't know, it's like 6 or 8 beers. So they can do a couple bottles of these things and they just get their load on. It's hard to explain. But when it's settled down a little bit now as they get older, but I mean, I've seen Ramon go on 7-day benders. And it's like a Benny Hill skit. like when he's walking past the house liquored up on like day 3 of the bender. And when I say a bender, I mean you go to bed drunk, you wake up and you start drinking for breakfast. Okay? They just drink. And it goes on for 7 days. Is that alcoholic? Maybe, I don't know. But I'll tell you this. When they don't have money, they don't drink. So you can see Ramon dry for a month. It's not like a North American alcoholic that drinks every day because we have money in North America. Even the way bad habits flow over here is regulated by the poverty and the environment. But when they have money, man, they just go for they can just go on a 7-day bender. You've never seen anything like it in your life unless you're an alcoholic yourself. But Ramon always had this magic about him. Tino is just like straight up crazy. He mumbles, Tino is kind of he's like what I would call an open door. Things come into Tino, things leave Tino. Okay? He's not possessed or anything like that, but things come into Tino and things leave Tino. And there's a lot of things around Tino. It was very funny when he met Bob, and they were sitting right across from each other on 2 different sofas. And Bob's just looking at him. And you can see Tino start to twitch. And I know what's going on, but Tino has no clue. Bob is speaking directly to his entities. It was kind of freaky to see. And Tino left. He got up and he left pretty quickly. He visits quite a bit too. Great guy. I don't mind him at all. So they're Costa Ricans, and their family has been here on this mountain for 2 generations, same as my wife's family. So my father-in-law was the first one to come here, and he died 5 years ago. And then there's my family, which has 11 kids, but they're not all on the mountain anymore. There's only three or four of them on the mountain, and a couple of them aren't here all the time. They have houses elsewhere. And that's quite something to see too, right? But everybody kind of wants to live here. It's very weird. Like everybody kind of wants to live here, but they leave the mountain to find work, okay? Because they can't live here anymore. I mean, they're successful farmers up here, but they're also running businesses in other parts of Costa Rica and investing money in their farms. And there's that one guy I told you about, Juan Carlos. He's got he built a big chicken business. He's got about 1,000 chickens, which produce about 1,000 eggs a day. And he sells them in one of the tourist towns down on the beach here on the Caribbean coast called Puerto Viejo. And so Tino is, every once in a while, Tino gets pinched. He did like 6-7 years ago. The cops would get him, and they would be wanting to bring him up on charges of narco trafficking, cultivating marijuana, which is taken pretty seriously over here, despite the fact that Canada and the United States have legalized marijuana. It's taken quite seriously over here. Like the cops over here, you're allowed to have a little bit on you for personal use, but if they find you growing 40, 50, 60 plants, you just go into that sort of Pablo Escobar category. And Tino got pinched a few times, and they would bring him in front of a magistrate after a night in jail, and the magistrate would look at the public prosecutor and go, "Are you serious? Let this man go. He's completely crazy." And Tino would show up on the mountain like 2 days later, and we'd go, "Tino, what happened? You just got busted growing a half hectare of marijuana." He goes, "They think I'm crazy." And he speaks English too, right? In this thick patois Jamaican accent. They think I'm crazy. Bambaclat. I can't do a good imitation, but you got to see it. And then they have another brother. He lives down in town, but he comes up and visits quite a bit. He was a math teacher in high school, And then in his like early 40s, he had a schizophrenic break. And my wife told me it was because he drank a homemade liquor made by the natives that they'd also laced with like THC. And they create this like crazy liquid, and this fellow Guillermo drank that, and he had a psychotic break, and he's never been the same since. He's a diagnosed schizophrenic. And then there's another brother. He's probably the most balanced of the family. He doesn't drink. He doesn't live here anymore. He went somewhere else, I think, to work in tourism. And then our utility of that family extended into the generation under Tino and Ramon. And by the way, Ramon is, I don't know how to describe him. Okay, so the only reason I'm doing this podcast is nobody here speaks English. Nobody I live with is ever going to see it, okay? Ramon is the most virile man, the most sexualized or sensual human being I've ever met in my life. And he defies all logic. You can't say, well, he was exposed to pornography. He's never had a cell phone. He's never had a computer. Nothing. Okay? And this is the guy that can call birds to his hand. But there are stories on the mountain of him being liquored up and being caught with goats. He's bisexual. He'll go with men. He'll go with women. Very, very odd guy, right? But very affable. Like when he comes to visit, I like to sit and shoot the shit with him for an hour. Quite a bit, actually. And one sec. Yeah, dogs were barking up a storm there. And then, yeah, so just one of the most unique human beings I've ever met. You know, when he comes over and visit, if he's drunk, he always does the same thing. He puts a finger on my arm. He goes, "Oh, you have such lovely skin, Blanco." And my wife will be over at the stove cooking, and she'll just cold cock Ramon and go, "Ramon, don't touch my husband." And he'll go, "Oh, si, prima," because they're cousins, right? It's fucking hilarious. And then we had the real heavy work was done by a really good crew of young people that we chose. And I still stay friends with all of them. And they generally came from down off the mountain. And they would come up on motorcycles in the morning and then start work at 7 a.m. and work till 4 in the afternoon. And I still maintain friendships with all of them. They're really good guys. It was a good time. And then so building the house was really quite something. It was a really unifying experience. Introduced us to the community. And there was a kind of universal respect because foreigners don't come here. It was a unique form of construction that used the earth, and everybody just thought it was just spectacular what we did here. Nobody's replicated it because, I don't know, they're not very creative or inventive people, the Costa Ricans. They know what they know and they repeat it. And and the natives, they would pass by the build site on their way out of the jungle down to get down to the highway, the natives have to walk about 12 or 13 kilometers. And it's an arduous walk. And they can do it with babies on their back. It's just incredible what these people can do. Like I said, the physical aspect of life here, it just goes up a notch, okay? And they're not all gym jacked like North Americans. It's not Joe Rogan fit. I could find you like 140-pound Kabakar Indian, 5'5", 140 pounds. And just walking through these mountains, he'd bury any of these people you see. And even the UFC athletes. I'm not joking. The level of conditioning in the natives and the Costa Ricans up here as well, and the Nicaraguans, it's mind-boggling. It's another order of physical fit, and it's just all from working all day. And then some of the other things I want to talk about as I go, these mountain stories, you know, what it's like to live in a place like this that is different. Okay? So I went my whole life in Canada without knowing anybody who was murdered. Okay? And since I've been here, there have been 2 murders in my immediate family. A nephew who I've told you about in the past, I think he got killed around 25. Totally deserved it as far as I'm concerned, if deserve is such a thing. He voluntarily chose to go into this life. It's very sad for the family. And his father got killed, who was my favorite brother-in-law. And this all happened about 5 years ago, maybe 6 now. Time flies up here. But that introduced me to the violence in this part of the world, and specifically my part of Costa Rica. I think 3 of the young guys that worked for me building the house had gunshot wounds. Like they could show you where bullet holes had gone into their body. And, when John Z, the super soldier, was up, he'd take his shirt off and show them, yeah, here are mine. And he's been shot like 5 times as well, right? So they're going, who's this crazy gringo, Bruce McDonald, right? So that introduced me to the violence and how these people cope with it and stuff like that, which was another dimension to living over here. It took forever for Starlink to get here. I've only had Starlink for about 2 years now. It's completely changed my life up here, my ability to work and all of these sorts of things. And I'm very grateful for that as well. And then I've just kept working as I've been up here. And what's really happened is I've completely changed up here. I no longer live to that really sort of tight schedule of North America and the constant pressure. And you get used to it, right? So it becomes your normal and you don't see it as pressure. But when you go somewhere, excuse me, when you go somewhere and depressurize, that you realize how much pressure and stress you were under. Which is why I think that the health over here is so much better. It's made me rethink everything I think I know about what quality of life is. What does it matter if you fit into the upper middle class in Canada or the United States? You have $1 million home, you drive a Mercedes, an Audi, or a BMW, or a Land Rover. Your kids go to private schools and all that. What does it matter if you hate what you do, you have to do it 65, 70 hours a week, and you live for 10 years after you retire, and it's with an unbelievable level of medication because you didn't live correctly until you were 65. It's really kind of amazing when you start to do this lifestyle math and try to figure it all out. Now, what I've learned as I've lived here is that this is just a magical place. And all modesty aside, I've even amplified that with all the spiritual work I do up here. It is impossible to come and stay with me for 2 weeks and not be affected. If you're coming with troubles, those troubles will materialize. I'll see them. My wife will see them. It's like your thinking brings them out. I know it sounds crazy. I know I sound like an 18th century Italian woman, that level of superstitious, but it's all real. I've seen people come here and literally have self-created demons pulled out of them. Okay? Amazing to see. And it just has to do with the incredible energy here and the incredible life force here, which is like nothing I've ever seen in my life. You know how you can walk into the woods in North America, like in Virginia or Ontario or Michigan, and everywhere you walk, you can just sort of walk through the woods, whether there's a path or not, because the trees are spaced a certain distance, And you know how in a forest you can see about 150, 200 meters? You might have to move your head a little bit to look around trees and stuff like that, but you can see, even when you're in the middle of the woods off a trail in North America, because of the way the forest grows, it's just all sort of spaced. The jungle amplifies the density of a North American forest by about tenfold. So when you're in the jungle, you can't see any further than about 30 meters, like 100 feet. Okay? And in certain parts of the jungle, you can't see beyond like 10, 15 meters, which is 30 or 45 feet. There's just so much foliage, so much broadleaf foliage. The way it grows here is just amazing. And when there's that much life around you, in the yogic sense, just like the pure expression of life, it affects you deeply, very, very profoundly. It enhances all of your inner work, which I'm very grateful for, right? And it changes the way you see life. And I am such a completely different person after being here for 10 years now. I don't know. So, I wanted to share these mountain stories with you tonight. Oh, and horseback riding up here is just unbelievably fun. There's all kinds of fun stuff to do up here. And now, I wanted to cap this show off with a little talk about the Talamanca Review and everything I do on it. Now, you're getting a perspective on what's going on here at the Talamanca Review that I think is unparalleled. I feel as though I've been commissioned by some unseen force to deliver these dispatches, like Walter Cronkite, multidimensional journalism. I feel I'm getting it better and more accurate than any voice out there. In terms of putting it all together. Stuff that people who've been in this field and made a living at it, like Carrie Cassidy, can't quite put it all together. Okay? She gets some stuff, she doesn't get other stuff, but the big picture's just not there. You'll know that Carrie is starting to get it when she does a show on the Third Temple of Solomon, but that's highly unlikely because she's Jewish. And I don't think she quite understands how the magical and the UFO world fold together. And I wanted to tell you a little bit more about my life up here, because I wanted to let you know that I'm aware of what I'm dumping on you. I'm aware of how heavy it is. And it doesn't mean life is not beautiful. Okay? I believe, my faith is that everything that happens under the will of the Creator. And the Creator loves us. So if we're going through a reptilian takeover of this planet, then the Creator has decided that that is permissible. Okay? Now you could say the Creator is agnostic to what happens in the far reaches of creation, material, astral, things like this. Maybe. I don't know. But it has to do with how you come to understand yourself and what you are. Okay? And there's no excuse for being here and not enjoying life and not being grateful for life, no matter what the state of that life is. I don't care if it's the French Civil War under Napoleon. I don't care if it's World War II. I don't care whatever is going on. You have a duty and an obligation to find happiness in life. You have a duty and obligation to assimilate your trauma, to take the darkness and turn it into light. And that includes everything I'm giving you through my dispatches on the Talamanca Review. So what? Yeah, it's pretty spooky if you think about it a lot. Hybridized human race, but it's probably happening. So what? It doesn't change what you are at the highest level of self. The true self, the yogic self, the sat self, okay, as in sat guru, as a soul, as a pure being that comes and goes from bodies and lives intermittently between bodies in another dimension and then comes here and reincarnates. Okay? Nothing really changes. What we're supposed to be doing down here, it doesn't really change. And this is how I can stay happy and still do these podcasts, still write these books, and still be happy. Because my faith is that it's all for a reason I might not understand, but I trust the Creator. And that's my faith. It may sound silly or facile to you, but I wouldn't be able to live without it. And I have it's not just purely a belief system. You know, I have to tell you it's something I believe because I can't transmit a realization to you. And because I can't quantify what I'm saying for other people, it's not objective, it's not scientific, and therefore I can't say it's fact. So I say, this is my faith. I could say I know these things, but it's non-transferable knowledge. There's no calculus for it. There's no physics for it. There's no chemistry. There's no biology. A little bit when you get down into the astral, the bloodlines, the magic, and all of this sort of stuff, moving around the universe in the etheric space. That can be understood, and that can be analyzed in a very rational way, a kind of metaphysics or meta-science. But that's not generally where I spend my time. And that's not generally where I direct my consciousness. I live very similar to a Christian without calling Christ my Savior. That's the easiest way I could tell you. Okay? But I believe, I know that something is guiding all of this. Everything has purpose, no matter how dark it gets. We're being refined, we're being purified, we're being transformed, we're being alchemized, we're being crystallized. And the chrysalis is the pupation that a caterpillar goes into before it becomes a butterfly. And the greatest service you can do yourself, if you don't understand all the high metaphysics or you haven't done enough work to have the higher realizations, is to simply have gratitude for life and to live life courageously. And to always be grateful that you were given this opportunity, that you take these breaths every day, that your heart beats, that you're alive, that you have a body, that you have at least the opportunity to explore the meaning of life. And that carries through everything, okay? All this shit we're going through. Temple of Solomon, yeah. This planet's been here billions of years, okay? This is just something we're going through. Anyways, that's about enough for tonight. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.